The film opens with three friends, Chris, Daniel, and Alicia, driving through the forests of Georgia for a hiking trip. On the way, Daniel stops the car to relieve himself. During this time, Chris tries to talk to Alicia about an incident from the previous night, but she dismisses it, telling him to keep quiet as it was a mistake. They then continue their journey, arrive at their destination, and begin their hike. While hiking, Daniel tells his friends that the Russian army abandoned several landmines bombs in the area during World War II and that they are still found there. The conversation reveals that Alicia and Daniel are in love and are soon to be married. This causes Chris visible discomfort. That night, while camping around a fire, Daniel asks Chris the reason for his melancholy. Chris shrugs it off, telling Daniel to enjoy his own life instead of worrying about him. Daniel assures him that they will remain friends even after the wedding. The three friends then happily go to sleep. The next morning, Chris catches someone tampering with their belongings and beats him up. The person identifies himself as Davi, a friend of Daniel's. Daniel and Alicia quickly arrive and restrain Chris. Chris apologizes to Davi, and they introduce themselves. Daniel explains to Chris that he called Davi to take photos of their trip. Following Davi's instructions, they all pose for a photo in front of a cluster of bushes. Looking through the camera, Davi sees something under Chris's foot and tells everyone not to move. After checking, Daniel identifies it as a landmine. The slightest movement would cause it to explode. Everyone panics. Davi urges them to remain calm and states that it will take 4 to 5 hours for external experts to arrive for help. He also insists that no one should approach Chris for their own safety. However, after sending Davi away to get help, Daniel stays right beside Chris. A frightened Alicia tells Daniel to move away from him, but Daniel firmly states he won't leave Chris alone until help arrives. Daniel ignores Chris's requests to leave and angrily tells Alicia to stay away. When Daniel moves toward Alicia, his phone gets a signal, and he calls for help. Alicia is relieved. Daniel asks for a bomb expert to be sent, but he tells Alicia that the police are refusing their assistance. When Alicia asks why, Daniel reveals that the police said, "We don't help prostitutes." Alicia is shocked. Crying, she begs him to call the police, saying she was going to tell him everything before the wedding. Daniel then reveals that he was only fooling her and that there is no mobile signal there. It is at this moment that the true reason for the trip and the conflict is disclosed. Daniel had found out about the incident Chris tried to discuss in the car, that Chris and Alicia had slept together once. Chris is still in love with Alicia. Daniel had orchestrated this trip and set the landmine trap as an act of revenge. Davi was also a participant in Daniel's plot. Daniel retrieves a hidden pickaxe and gives it to Alicia, saying the only way to save Chris is to dig him out. Daniel then pulls the pin from the landmine, throws it away, collects his belongings, and leaves. Alicia tries to stop him, but Daniel ignores her and leaves. Davi was waiting for him, and they depart together. Alicia finds the landmine's pin in the woods but cannot reinsert it. Finally, she starts digging to save Chris. Meanwhile, a hunter named Ilya arrives with his dog. The dog tries to attack Alicia, but Ilya restrains it. Ilya then points a gun at them. Alicia explains that they are hikers and her friend is stuck on a mine. Ilya initially believes they are murderers who have buried someone. However, upon hearing Alicia's pleas, Ilya realizes he was mistaken. Alicia asks if he can help dig, and Ilya agrees. He then asks how they got stuck. Alicia tries to hide the truth, but Ilya threatens to leave, saying, "I won't help if you don't tell the truth." Alicia then confesses that her fiancé did this for revenge because she and Chris had slept together. Ilya then asks, "What will I get if I help you?" Alicia offers all her belongings in exchange. A pleased Ilya checks her bag and finds a pair of underwear. Ilya then tells Alicia, "I want the underwear you are wearing," and attempts to rape her. Chris offers his $300, but Ilya insists he doesn't want the money and will leave if she doesn't give him the underwear. Left with no choice, Alicia agrees to give him the underwear. As she tries to go to the tent to remove it, Ilya stops her and demands that she take it off right there. With no other way to get help, Alicia removes her underwear and gives it to him. Ilya then starts digging. Hearing a radio sound from Ilya's bag, Alicia begs him to use it to call for help. Ilya again asks, "What will I get if I give you the radio?" Ilya throws Alicia's underwear far away and says he will give her the radio if she fetches it in her mouth like a dog. Though initially reluctant, Alicia is forced to do it and gets the radio. Alicia calls an emergency number, but the officer on the other end doesn't speak English. Alicia asks Ilya to call for help in Georgian. Ilya makes another deal, "I'll ask for help if you strip naked." Alicia refuses and tells him to leave. The officer on the radio tries to speak to them again. Ilya forces Alicia to tell the officer that, "We are safe," to prevent the police from coming. Since she doesn't know Georgian, Ilya offers to translate but threatens that she must remove one piece of clothing for every word she says until the officer understands. Giving in to Ilya's threat, Alicia removes her top for the first few words. Later, as there is no response from the officer, Ilya prepares to leave, but the officer speaks again. Ilya rushes back. Frightened by Ilya's threats, Alicia begs him to leave. However, Ilya points his gun at her. Chris distracts Ilya with his talking and urges Alicia to run away. Ilya and his dog pursue her. Chris uses a chain to grab Ilya's gun. Ilya soon returns with Alicia and begins to rape her. As Chris starts to shoot, Ilya's dog attacks him, and the bullet misses the target and pierces Alicia's body. Chris falls into the pit. When Chris regains consciousness, he finds that Alicia is dead and the landmine was a toy. A few months later, Chris arrives at a house, claiming to be a lost tourist. The woman and her daughter who live there offer to give him a map of the area. Chris goes upstairs. The house belonged to Ilya, who was working outside at the time. After the map is printed, Chris prepares to leave, but Ilya's wife invites him to stay for lunch. Chris sits down to eat with them. Just then, Ilya arrives. Ilya is shocked to see Chris in his house and immediately asks him to leave. His wife and daughter do not understand why. Ilya takes Chris outside, offering to drop him off in his car, and asks Chris not to involve his family, telling him to meet him alone outside in an hour. Chris agrees and leaves. Ilya later releases his dog to attack Chris. However, a short time later, Chris breaks back into the house, shouting that the dog has been hurt. As Ilya goes to fetch his gun, Chris uses his own gun to shoot Ilya in both legs. Chris then asks Ilya's wife to take Ilya inside and ties her hands. Chris demands that Ilya tell his family why he has come, showing them Alicia's underwear. Ilya apologizes, saying he sometimes makes mistakes when drunk. Chris then does to Ilya's daughter what Ilya did to Alicia. Afterward, Chris puts a single bullet in the gun and tells Ilya's daughter to strip. If she strips naked before the bullet fires, she can escape. The daughter is forced to undress. However, the gun fires on the first round, and she is killed. Chris realizes he has messed everything up in his anger. He cries. The film ends by showing scenes where a good person was transformed into a bad one by circumstances.